Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the virtual open day for joint PhD program of Maastricht University and University of Indonesia. I will be your host for today. My name is Wanda Nukusumo, PhD student from University of Indonesia. Today will be very exciting as we will get the opportunity to explore the joint PhD program, as well as introducing the potential supervisor candidates from both respective universities, their respective labs, and get a glimpse of their research interests as well. We will also going to introduce the labs that you can join and relevant to your preferred dissertation topics. And as for those of you who are interested to pursue your PhD program and currently intend to apply for scholarship, we will also have a session on PhD scholarship of LPDP delivered by a grantee and an outlook of PhD life in the Netherlands. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Bagus Dakwin M.Hum, Dean of Faculty of Psychology, University of Indonesia, to take the stage and deliver the opening remarks. Dr. Bagus Dakwin M.Hum, the screen is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ulan. Good morning for participant from Netherlands. And good afternoon, selamat siang buat yang di Indonesia. Thank you all for your presence here. Welcome to the virtual open day, joint PhD and PhD by research, Fakultas Psikologi Universitas Indonesia and Fakultas Psikologi and Neuroscience, Maastricht University. This time, we will talk about the opportunity to hold a doctoral education program with several specialties. We plan a joint program between Maastricht University and University of Indonesia. And also, we will run a PhD by research program. And today, we will, all of us will follow the socialization of the plan. Here, there are already at least 3 hour speakers here. Professor Henry Otgaar. How are you? And Dr. Mira Nurmila, and also Mas Nathanael Smampo, and I think we also have researchers and lecturers from Maastricht University and from the University of Indonesia. All of them will share information and understanding with us about the program plan. Thanks for the resourcefulness of all of you as speaker here. I'm so glad we can meet today to discuss something important. This joint PhD and PhD by research program is one of our ways to improve the quality of doctoral education at University of Indonesia, and we hope also for Maastricht University, and more broadly to improve the quality of research coverage of the 2 universities. Hopefully the program can run well, and hopefully you all get an adequate understanding here. So this program can be interested, and you will and want to register in this program. In the collaboration between Maastricht University and University of Indonesia can strengthen research in both institutions, I think, because with this collaboration, there can be more thought and other resources that us to do research. In that way, so we can hope that the result will be much better. I think I hope you enjoy this event, and we hope you will join with us. Thank you for everyone again. And I think that's all for me. Good afternoon. Thank you again. Back to Wulan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bagus Takwin, for your opening remarks. As I have been briefed by the committee, next, before we move on to the opening remarks from Dr. Mira Nurmila, we are going to introduce a short video on the research group that is existing in the University of Indonesia. Dear committee, the screen is yours. Okay, so as you can see here, one of the research group that is currently existing in the University of Indonesia is called the Leadership, Decent Work and Diversity. And if you can move to the next slide, please. Hello? Okay. Excuse me, there was a delay on the internet. Okay, here it comes again. Right. Research group on leadership, decent work, and diversity is spearheaded by Dr. Corina. Sorry, can you put the display on full screen so I make sure that the name is introduced correctly? Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, please bear with us for a second. Dear committee, can you please put the slides again? Put up the slides again. Thank you very much. Perhaps we can have a look at, right. So as you can see here, these are the research topics that are covered within the scope of the Leadership, Decent Work and Diversity Lab. Research group, I'm sorry. And this particular research group is, can we go to the next slide, please? Spearheaded by Dr. Karina Rianto Putra, PhD, Psychol, and also Dr. Rizka Halida and Deborah Elvina Purba, PhD. And these are the research interests that the audience and also fellow professors from Maastricht University can get familiar with. And then I believe there's another slide that is going to be put up. Yes, thank you very much. Next. Sorry, there's an audio. Yes, okay, perhaps we can just. Turn down the video. Can we go back to the start and just silence the, yes, okay. Teacher and Student Effectiveness Research Group. Next slides, maybe. Let's, I'm very conscious of time, so probably we can just introduce the head of the research groups. These are some of the selected list of publications that has been published by the research group. And next. Okay, right. I think then we are now going to move on to the next agenda, where we are going to listen to next sessions, which we will engage Dr. Mira Nurmila, M.Si, the head of doctoral degree program, University of Indonesia, to introduce the doctoral program in the University of Indonesia. Dr. Mira Nurmila, screen is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wulan, for introducing myself, and good morning, everyone, participant and also speaker from Netherlands, and good afternoon, everyone, participant and speaker from Indonesia. I will share my screen first. I will give a brief introduction about the doctoral program at Universitas Indonesia, especially joint PhD, PhD supervision, and PhD by research from Universitas Indonesia, and joint supervision with Maastricht University. The collaboration in supervising doctoral students through fully and a PhD candidate at Universitas Indonesia as a co-promotor from Maastricht University, or fully PhD candidate at Maastricht University and co-promotor from Universitas Indonesia. The collaboration with conducting in research, laboratory, and also publication. The collaboration is open for PhD by research and will be open in 2023. PhD by research Universitas Indonesia have a requirement student for academic potential test above 415 and total score also 415 and KPI minimum at 3, and then a research proposal assessment by expert in a related field of science, publication, track record publication in journal relevant to the research topic, and also recommendation from prospective promoter or co-promoter from Universitas Indonesia. And here's the curriculum. From the PhD by research, we don't have any coursework, but still there are some credit that have to be accomplished by PhD by research. So in every semester, they have to fulfill the regular seminar, and the research proposal examination plan will be conducted in semester 2. And the PhD by research have a requirement 3 publication for a doctoral degree. There is 1 paper presented at international conference, 2 international journal article, and also 1 article from Scopus Index by Simagung. And we also have requirement for promoter for PhD by research program who have a minimum H index 5 and also have a track record publication first author for international publication. Here are some of all of the group research laboratory in Universitas Fakulty of Psikologi Universitas Indonesia. There is a leadership, design work, diversity research group, economic and consumer behavior research group, family study research group, community mental health research group, mindfulness and psychotherapy research group, teacher and student effectiveness research group, cognition affective and well-being laboratory, executive function laboratory, tools of healthy mind, body and sexuality laboratory, social intervention and crisis laboratory, learning, education and school well-being laboratory, political psychology laboratory, and traffic psychology laboratory. There are 3 of group research laboratory and Faculty of Psychology who have the potential supervisor have requirement for PhD by research, and there will be 3 of these group research and laboratory head laboratory will be present in this seminar. This is there are cognition, affect, and well-being laboratory, toward healthy mind, body, and sexuality laboratory, and political psychology laboratory. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, Bulan still mute.
Okay. Sorry, Mbak Mira. Okay, thank you, Dr. Mira Nurmila, for your extensive explanations on the doctoral program at University of Indonesia. Perhaps we can all direct our attentions now to watch one of the introduction videos of the labs that was previously mentioned and understand better about their research focuses. I think we will be looking into 2 videos from 2 labs. First one, we will be viewing an introduction videos from Cognition, Affect, and Wellbeing Laboratory, and then followed by the introductions video from Towards Healthy Mind, Body, and Sexuality Lab. So let's have a look, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello everyone, my name is Agnes, and in this occasion I would like to introduce you our lab, the Cognition, Affect, and Wellbeing Lab. It is one of those few labs at the Faculty of Psikologi Universitas Indonesia that tries to improve psychology as a multidisciplinary field of study. That's why we also involve many collaborators coming from diverse fields of study, such as sociology, linguistics, anthropology, and economics. Our vision is a mentally healthy and happy Indonesian society that is supported by global and national policies. Our lab also focuses on 3 research themes. The first theme is cognitive processes. So we focus on understanding cognitive processes that are fundamental for mental health, well-being, and multilingualism. Here we also have been developing online experimental tasks that are meant to measure individual performance in cognitive inhibition, response inhibition, cognitive flexibility, working memory capacity and updating, and also memory structures. The second research theme is affective processes. Here we focus on the effects of mood and emotion on how we think or our cognitive processes. We've been developing databases of affective stimuli that are suitable for Indonesian contexts, and these stimuli come in different types, such as facial expressions, words, and also vignettes. We've also been developing online experimental tasks that allow us to measure the effects of emotional stimuli on our cognitive processes. The third research theme is well-being. So here we focus on global well-being, specifically global well-being that involve psychological and objective criteria of the quality of human life. We also concern about the effects of climate change, poverty, and gender roles on global well-being. And some members in our lab also focuses on contextual well-being, such as school well-being, which involves developing theories on teachers' well-being and students' well-being, and also the relationship between nature-relatedness, mindfulness, and subjective well-being. So that's a little bit of introduction about our lab. Thank you.
Okay, so that was from the cognitive well-being and Cognition, Affect and Wellbeing Laboratory. And as I have previously mentioned, we are now going to view the second video, getting ourselves familiarized with, they call it THUMS Lab. THUMS stands for Towards Healthy Mind, Body, and Sexuality Lab. So let's have a look.
Hello everyone, my name is Alir Hadiasi. I'm also called Alin. I am from the Toward Healthy Mind, Body, and Sexuality Lab, commonly abbreviated as THUMS. THUMS is one of the labs in the Faculty of Psikologi Universitas Indonesia. And the vision of THUMS is to attain an optimal well-being, mentally and physically, and also sexually. This is so as there's a strong connection, strong reciprocal connection among those three factors. Hence, THUMS incorporate the biopsychosocial approach in understanding psychological issues. Further, THUMS also encourage multidisciplinary collaboration. This is so in the quest to attain a more comprehensive understanding. And a little bit information about THUMS. So THUMS is the merging of two labs. The first one is the Health Psychology Lab, and the second one is the Gender and Equality Lab. Currently, there are 3 concentrations under the THUMS. The first concentration is toward the health psychology area. And one of the main focus is studying chronic pain. THUMS has conducted a longitudinal studies identifying the predictors of chronic pain for Indonesians. And the result of those studies are incorporated in the CBT for chronic pain protocols. And currently, this protocols is used in the effectiveness study for Indonesian experiencing chronic pain. Another topic that is continuously studied at THUMS is the health-related behavior, including adherence to medical regimen. As such, one member of THUMS is doing his PhD on the adherence to antiretroviral therapy for those who have HIV positive. And during the COVID-19 pandemics, THUMS conducted studies that evaluate the impact of COVID-19 on people's life and people's well-being, as well as studying the intention to perform health-related measures. Another topic in this concentration is sleep quality. And at this moment, the lab is designing an experimental studies to evaluate the impact of weighted blanket on sleep quality. The pandemic and the use of technology proposed the study on online sexual behavior. The study on sexual behaviors interact with the second concentration of this lab, which is the sexuality and gender. This concentration consists of professors and lecturers that have strong background in the field. And another topic under this concentration is the study on domestic violence based on the perspective of the perpetrators. Moving on to the third concentration, which is the psychopathology. One consistently researched topic is the psychosis, and the lecturers/researchers in this concentration has a very strong background on schizophrenia study with many published articles. And besides doing research, THUMS also perform various community service activities. One of the several examples are the diabetes talk, the talk about the reason of why people stay in violent relationship, and also activities on workshop for tuberculosis peer assistance, and lastly, the workshop on CBT for psychosis. So that is a condensed description of THUMS, and thank you for watching.
All right, so next we will take a closer look to the Political Psychology Lab, which I'm a proud member of. And this time we are more than happy to welcome the head of the Political Psychology Lab in person, which will explain in more detail about the lab activities itself. So let's welcome Professor Hamdi Muluk, M.Si, to share the details. Professor Hamdi Muluk, the screen is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ulan. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Good afternoon, for participant and professor from Universitas Indonesia. And good morning for professor and participant from Netherlands. So great welcome from laboratory, political psychology laboratory at Universitas Indonesia. So I will share my screen and give you a brief introduction who we are and what we have done so far. So let me check my slide. Okay, see, here they are. Okay, so is the slide is on the screen, Wulan?
Yes, Professor.
Already? Okay.
Yes.
So we are the political psychology laboratory in Faculty of Psychology at Universitas Indonesia. It is the first lab that established in Universitas Indonesia. We have established at the 2008, if I'm not mistaken. So who we are? So we are the lab of political psychology. We are conducting research at wide scope. Actually, we can call it social and political psychology lab. So we conduct research to understand the psychological factor that underlying all the social and political issues. Now, currently, we have focused our research more on, like political ideology, and also political ideology, and then also to terrorism, radicalism, and other intergroup relation with diverse group in Indonesia, you know, like race relation and also ethnic group relation. So our membership not also come from lecturers, professor, but also student, alumni, and fellow researchers that who can collaborate with us with the topic that I have described before. So we have also collaboration with government and various other stakeholders. So we work on evidence-based research to produce renowned studies in politics from a psychological perspective. That is our mission. So, so in terms of member, in the full-time lecturer, we have only 4 persons. So first me as the head of laboratory. So field of my study, usually political psychology, peace psychology, social psychology, cross-cultural psychology, and related. But I'm also have experience in study and also in forensic psychology, as I am the advisor of the Forensic Psychology Association in Indonesia. So our vice head lab is Dr. Mira Nurmila, now the head of the tour program. The other faculty member that we have in lab, also Dr. Jovarian Hudiana. So his interest in psychology of religion and psychology of ideology and also ethnic group relation. And the 4th faculty member is Vinda Yusisia. Now she is the PhD student in the Loyola at University of Chicago currently. Now we have also had a grant from many agencies like PNPT or National Counterterrorism for the project of the radicalization. We have done it in the last 8 years until current. So we have also project with INFIT, the NGOs, well-known NGO in Indonesia, BNPT, Detachment of 88, Ministry of Social Affairs, Ministry of Coordinator, Ministry of Defense also. And we have also project with the Ministry of the Religious Affairs for conducting every year the index of national potential conflict. And we have also a project from UNDP and until now. And we have also our collaboration with the European Research Council and also with Temasek and also with the University of Maryland at the USA. So this is brief introduction for us. Thank you, Wulans.
Thank you, Professor Hamdi Muluk, for your detailed explanations on the political psychology lab. I'm very conscious of time, so I think we can move on to our next agenda, where we will have, would like to invite Professor Dr. Henry Otgaar to introduce the doctoral program of Maastricht University. So please welcome him. And Professor Otgaar, the screen is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can hear you clearly.
Okay, selamat siang semua and selamat pagi. So good afternoon and good morning for everyone. Well, before I start, first of all, thank you for the ones who have been organizing this. This looks really nice. I'm really impressed. It's an honor for me to talk to you about, for example, the research that we do a little bit at our faculty, but I'm sure others of my colleagues who are also in this meeting will talk more. We also have the Vice Dean here, Professor Petra Hurks, so she will certainly talk more about this perhaps as well. So it's also an honor that many of my colleagues at the Psychology and Neuroscience faculty are present here as well. So thank you so much for everyone who has helped in this. So I also have a couple of slides and which I would like to share with you. And of course, afterwards, I know that there is some time for questions and answers. So can you see these slides?
Yes, we can, Professor.
Okay, makasih banyak. So this is about how to become a PhD student, a little bit in general. So I'm going to talk about my experience about PhD student positions at our faculty. Again, my colleagues can say also more about this, and I will delve a little bit into an area in which I do research. First of all, I don't have such a beautiful video as the Universitas Indonesia. I don't have. This is very impressive, what we have just seen. But I just want to do a little bit of promo. And I think it's also important for a couple of reasons, which I will talk to you about in a bit. So this is the Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience. There's only one building. We have another building, it's the Neuroscience building. And one of my colleagues, a couple of my colleagues who are in that building will talk more about this. So we have a Psychology and Neuroscience faculty. And important for you to know, for everyone who is present here, is that there are several departments in that faculty, and in all of these departments, people do research and teaching-related matters. So we have a department called Clinical Psychological Science, we have a department called Cognitive Neuroscience, a department Neuropsychology and Psychopharmacology, department Work and Social Psychology, and the final one, a department called Methodology and Statistics. I want to quickly go through each of these departments to show you the diversity of research that has been done there. Again, briefly, because some of my colleagues who do research in these departments will say more about this. I also want to say that not everyone from all of these departments are here today, but just that you know, more is done to make sure that, for example, if you do research in the area of sexuality, we also have researchers in our faculty doing this type of research who, for example, are not here today. But there is a lot of, I think there are a lot of links between the different faculties. So maybe hear a little bit more in depth about the first department, which is the Department Clinical Psychological Science, which is led by Professor Jansen. And this consists of separate sections. You can call it research groups or research teaching groups, a little bit related to the research group that you just showed us. There's one section, which is the forensic psychology section, which is supervised by Professor Corinne de Ruiter. I'm in that section, and I will say a little bit more about this after a couple of slides. We have a section on research on eating disorders and obesity, which is supervised by Professor Anne Roefs. We have a section on clinical psychology, which is led by Dr. Meesters, and a research group on experimental health psychology by Dr. Van Kleef and Professor Peters. And I use these names because perhaps some of you might think, well, that seems to be linked with some of the research that I do. So then you can look these names and you can try to find them in Google, or you can contact me or one of my colleagues. This is the cognitive neuroscience department, a very big department, as you can see, which is supervised, led by Professor Peter de Weert. And some of the members who are of this department are also today here. So there is a group on auditory perception and cognition by Dr. Lars Rieke. We have a group on brain and emotion by Professor De Gelder, which is interesting as well, because I've heard that some people of you are interested in emotion, affection, etc. And they do it from a kind of neuroscience perspective. We have research on computational architecture of visual processing streams by Professor Goebel. And if I'm correct, he's also the one who is involved in research and coordinates the research of the faculty board in our faculty. We have research on brain and language by Professor Bonte, but also Professor Jansma, one of the former deans of our faculty, is also present here and who can say more about this. We have research on developmental cognitive neuroscience with a big focus also on developmental psychology by Dr. Jonkman. We have brain stimulation and cognition, because I've seen that at the faculty at UI, there's sort of research being done at cognition, and this is then more from a brain stimulation perspective by Professor Alex Sack. We have methods for neuroscience by Professor Poser. We have research on perception, attention, and learning by Professor Peter de Weert. So this is, I think, a very nice connection between cognitive psychology, but also the cognitive neurosciences, and research on multi-scale imaging of brain connectivity. I will come to this a little bit later, because I've also heard that some of you might think, well, we do not do any fMRI stuff, for example. So how can we come into contact with this? I will say a little bit more about this in a couple of slides. We have also a group on neuropsychology and psychopharmacology, and one of the members of that group is also here. So there's a group dedicated on research on neuropsychology by Professor Sonja Kotz, and research on psychopharmacology by Professor Ramakers. We have a group work and social psychology by Professor Zijlstra, and one part is on work and organizational psychology. And I know that some of the themes that I saw today during the slides are quite related also to this group, as also the section applied social psychology, which is supervised by Professor Reuter and Professor Jonas. And then we have a department on methodology and statistics, which is led by Professor Van Breukelen. And there are a couple of statistical experts who also support the entire staff of our faculty, but are also involved in research dedicated to methods and statistics. I want to say a little bit about the legal and forensic psychology group, and also showing that this is research which is not only relevant in the Netherlands, but certainly relevant also in Indonesia. And I'm sure you're well aware of the Jakarta International School case. And this is a case in which one of the important questions is about testimonies from children in that case, and whether these testimonies are true or not. And researchers from UI, but also from other parts of the world, including the legal and forensic psychology researchers at Maastricht, have been writing about this case, showing already the connection between the different universities. In Maastricht, we have a couple of labs devoted to legal and criminology psychology. This is a lab that I supervise, because that's a lab which is based in Maastricht, but also in Leuven. I also work in Belgium. It's called the Criminological and Experimental Legal Psychology Lab. But the most important one is the website of this section, which is the forensic psychology section, which tries to advocate for evidence-based practices in the legal system. And in that type of research, we are interested in, for example, reliability of testimonies, lie detection, interrogation and interviewing. So how should you interview victims of abuse, how should you do it in the best possible way, trauma and how this might affect testimonies, biases that, for example, judges might have or experts in the court might have, malingering, people who intentionally fake symptoms in a clinical settings, but also in a civil or forensic setting. I also saw some of the research teams of the political psychology group, terrorism. Some of our colleagues also are involved in that research, and especially on how to detect lies in terroristic cells, for example. A little bit about the teaching also. We have 2 master programs, a 1-year legal psychology master and a 2-year forensic psychology master, and also elective programs in the bachelor. I say that because one of the members who is in this meeting today has also followed one of these master programs, and many of you know him, which I'm referring to, Nael Sumampo. There's a lot of practical implications of our work. This is just a very brief selection. We, for example, give trainings at the child protection in the Netherlands, trainings at the police in the Netherlands, but also in other parts of the world. We are involved in expert witness work. And indeed, so we also do these trainings in other parts of the world, like, for example, Indonesia. Here you can see at the left the Dutch translation of an interview protocol on how to interview victims of child sexual abuse. And at the right, as you can see, is the version in Bahasa Indonesia, which has been translated by Nael Sumampo, one of the lecturers of your faculty, but also still doing his PhD and almost finalized at the Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience, showing already that research at both faculties is already ongoing. And here you can see it even more beautiful. This is one of the trainings that we did at UI, in which we trained the police, Indonesian police, in which you can see me in the middle, but also Nael Sumampo at the picture below at the right, which is also an ongoing project in which we try to train people on how should you interview child victims of trauma. Here are some PhD students that are under my supervision at this moment that are also in this meeting. They are from Universitas Indonesia, from the Faculty of Psychology. And one of them is Nurul Abia, and she's doing research on statement validity assessment, a difficult difficult words for something very simple, because it's about how to assess whether, for example, someone is telling the truth or not. And Nael Sumampo is involved, amongst others, on child interviewing. And like I said, Nael Sumampo, his thesis is, let's say, almost finished, and we'll be very proud if he will soon defend his thesis. And Nurul is also in the final stages of her PhD as well. And I have to say, it's going quite well, and I can show that also with this. Here's a brief selection of some papers that they have been doing and have been publishing. Here's a paper on the quality of child interviewing in Indonesia, which you can see Nael Sumampo. And here's a recent paper in which Nurul is involved, which is about psychological expert opinion and how this is being received by judges. And they are doing a lot of great work. And I think this is because of the, I would say, the very nice collaboration between the 2 countries and the 2 faculties. So perhaps some of you might think, well, I have a very good student. I would be interested in such joint PhD programs. And I see that some of you are doing research in, for example, health psychology or social psychology. My recommendation is try to contact one of our colleagues. For example, some of the people who are also here today in this session, Professor Petra Hurks, Professor Jansma, Dr. Schreiber, Dr. Jenny Schell, etc. Contact them and see whether perhaps you have some mutual interests and discuss a topic, and perhaps find a student who might be at Maastricht University or indeed at Universitas Indonesia. And one of the ideas indeed is to start perhaps these joint PhD programs in which, for example, a PhD student would do his PhD for, let's say, 2-3 years at UI and maybe 1 year at Maastricht on a topic that could be related to clinical psychology, social psychology, political psychology, etc. And we will hear today also about possible funding opportunities for this, but LPDP has already been mentioned by the moderator today. That could be an interesting way of getting a scholarship for this. What you often see in PhD projects in our field, but also I think at Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience, that often these are 4-year PhD projects. And like I said, if you want to do a joint PhD, you can think about how to squeeze these 4 years between UI and Maastricht, for example, a couple of years at UI and 1 year Maastricht, or the other way around. And as what we also saw at the Faculty of Psychology at UI, the same thing here as well. A dissertation needs to be written with containing chapters with studies which are oftentimes published and which there is a defense, public defense of that thesis in Maastricht. The last thing perhaps what I want to say is about these joint PhD projects, and especially that these PhD projects can be very diverse. So that's something that I also started. I've heard from some of the colleagues that it might be the case that, well, I'm interested in social psychology. We don't do anything on neuroscience. Can we do joint PhD projects? Yes, certainly possible. I think the diversity of topics could be a very strength to engage in, for example, interdisciplinary PhD projects in which you, for example, have different levels of expertise, but combining them might lead to very interesting joint projects. And here are already some examples. Nurul, for example, is doing research on psychometrics and statement validity assessment. So these are levels of expertise that you have, for example, at Maastricht, but also at DEPOC, at UI. But you could also think about other levels of expertise. For example, if research from UI have an expertise in developmental psychology, but want to see whether they could use this knowledge in a more applied field like legal psychology, that is possible. I'm, for example, talking with a student from UI who has interest in testing children, the children's lives, more their field of developmental psychology and how that might impact, for example, their statements. But you could also think about links between cognitive psychology, cognition research that is being done at UI, and neuroscience, in which, for example, when a PhD student comes to Maastricht, that he or she could engage in neuroscientific research or neuropsychological research. So in this way, you can engage in interdisciplinary PhD projects. And or another interesting thing is combining research on traffic psychology, stuff that is being done at UI, and psychopharmacological research. How do drugs impact, for example, driving, stuff that is also being done at Maastricht. So in that sense, you can also this can also result in some unique projects in which we can target different levels of psychological expertise between the different faculties of Indonesia and the Netherlands and Maastricht. Well, I think that's all that I wanted to say. I hope this is a little bit clear. Of course, if there are questions, I know we have question and answer sessions in a couple of minutes. Thank you very much. Makasih banyak.
Terima kasih, Professor Otgaar, for your extensive explanations on the PhD program in University of Maastricht. We are now going to move on to the next session. We're now going to continue with a series of presentations from the respective supervisor candidates from Maastricht University. So I would like to welcome again Professor Henry Otgaar, and also greetings to Vice Deans of Education, Professor Petra Hurks and Dr. Rudy Schreiber, and also Professor Bernadette Jansma and Dr. Jenny Schell-Leugers. So without further ado, I would like to welcome the respective professors. Perhaps we can begin with the sequence that I have just mentioned, or do you have specific preference?
Yeah, well, I combined my research already with my former presentation. So perhaps we can start with if my colleague Professor Petra Hurks is okay, perhaps she can continue now, if that's okay.
Yep. Sure, definitely. Thank you, Professor Otgaar. Greetings, Professor Hurks.
Thank you so much. And also, I want to compliment you for hosting this wonderful event and for pronouncing all these Dutch names so well. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
It's an honor to be here today, not only for me as a researcher and an educator, but also as a board member of the Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience. And I'm really impressed with what I've seen so far and what I've read on the internet on your university. And I'm really hoping that we can work together as universities, but also as individuals, researchers, so that we can bring science and education further. So it would be my really honor to contribute to this. So thank you for the invitation and for organizing this wonderful event. Henry Otgaar asked me to give a brief presentation on the work that I've been doing in terms of research. So I'm not going to explain a lot about all our education programs within our faculty or the broad scope of all of our studies, but what I've been doing together with my colleagues here in Maastricht, but also elsewhere. And I had some examples there. So it would be really nice if I can share the screen, and I think I can there. So let me, oh no, I'm leaving. I don't want to leave the meeting. Let me see for a minute. Yes. Do you see my screen now, the presentation? Yes, fantastic. Yes. So I'm a professor in psychodiagnostics, and I work together on several topics that I would like to show some examples of. And the core things that we're focusing on are to contribute to research on mental health and factors that influence it, to develop psychological tests and examine their quality and further improve these tests, and to investigate how we can effectively combine information collected to make a statement about a person, because that's the aim of psychodiagnostics, that you want to make a statement of somebody. How is he or she doing in terms of cognition or well-being, etc. And I want to give examples of what the kind of studies that we have been doing and are doing of these three areas. So that might inspire you perhaps to say, oh, I want to work there in terms of a joint PhD program, for instance. So the first one relates to the factors that contribute to mental health there. And the first example that I would like to give is from an initiative that is a national initiative in the Netherlands called Caring Universities, which is a joint initiative from several universities and universities of applied sciences in the Netherlands. And they have to do with students' well-being, because we noticed that a number of students say, well, we have a problem in terms of how are we feeling there, and we want to offer them free online services to improve students' well-being. And we do that in two ways. We do that on the one hand to offer a mind health check every 6 months, approximately. I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. And we offer free online programs that can improve potentially their mood, for instance. And we do this evidence-based as much as possible. So with respect to these mind health checks, every 6 months we ask all students from the joining universities to fill in a questionnaire if they want. And they get some feedback on how they're doing mentally. And there is still, unfortunately, an issue there in the Netherlands, but I think also worldwide. If you see these numbers, this is from a recent questionnaire. I think about 12,000 students filled in this questionnaire, and you see high levels of depressive symptoms and high levels of anxiety complaints. It's not saying that they have disorders, but they notice that they're not feeling mentally well. And this is already some feedback. So they get feedback based on these questionnaires. And then we ask them, do you get help for it? And many of them said, no, we didn't. And they gave reasons like, it's too expensive, it's logistically difficult, I don't know where to go, I'm fear of the consequences if I go for treatment, for instance. So with this Caring Universities initiatives, we hope to have to give them access to easier access to programs that might help them. And we train students to supervise the students that do these trainings there. And what we also do, it gives us a lot of data, and we analyze these data on which programs work and for whom does it work. So we use statistical analysis to see, okay, what can we do to target the people with the right training there. So this is an interesting project that I wanted to show you. Another project that I wanted to show you is to do with sexual violence and sexual harassment. And we noticed that among a lot of students, there were issues going on in this area. So we did a questionnaire, for instance, recently among students at Maastricht University, and those who replied indicated, at least a quarter of them indicated that they have experienced some sort of sexual violence, which is a lot, to be honest, there. And then we asked them, do you know where to get help at Maastricht University? And many of them said, I have absolutely no idea. So we need to do more research on how to help these individuals. And we're looking into factors that potentially make people at risk for having such an experience, such a negative experience, etc. We also are now piloting a model from a preventive training from Canada called the EAAA Sexual Assault Resistant Program. So these kind of things we are doing at Maastricht University. There's also another project that I just wanted to show you, is that we're starting together with people from Sweden and Africa, is to look at the effects of tennis training on social-emotional learning in children living in South Africa, just to give you a clue of what kind of studies that we're doing here. So that's one thing, studying mental health and factors related to it. The other one is developing psychological tests and examining their psychometric quality. And I wanted to give you another example there that we're doing together with people from robotics, people from economics, people from psychology, and we're looking at what can we learn from children's behavior, children's executive functioning, children's cognitive functioning, if we let them play with robots, like this one. It's called the Atmo. And what they need to do is to let this Atmo move as fast as they can while manipulating these kind of sliders. And these sliders have names, but we don't tell the children what these names mean. So in pairs, they have to work together and try to let the robot move. And here you see some examples of this, how some of these children let the Atmos move. And some make little animals out of it, with placing hearts on it, etc. And by doing this together also with schools, we have set up an observation scheme. We are now collecting digital data with this Atmo. We're analyzing speech, for instance, and by that we want to learn more about the cognitive functions of these children. We're also working together with people from different countries to translate instruments, but also to improve instruments in, for instance, Dutch. And these instruments are related to, for instance, intelligence, behavioral questionnaires, and or time management there. Also, with respect to psychological tests, we want to evaluate the quality of these tests. And for instance, many of our faculty are involved in a committee that's called the CODAN committee that evaluates on a national level the quality of tests. And we advise, for instance, our government on specific tests and the quality of that and how to do that. Well, then my final slide is that next to studying well-being of factors that influence it and the quality of tests and developing tests, we investigate on how we can effectively combine information that we collect with tests, with observations, etc., to make a judgment about a person. And we do that in different settings, like in work and organization setting, when you have to select a person. How do you combine all this information and how do you then avoid that you get some biases in there? Or we're now preparing a project, for instance, on how do you decide that people that work on a suicide phone and they get a call like, oh, I'm really in trouble there. How do you decide that somebody is now really in trouble and there need to be happening direct actions there? So these kind of things are we doing there? How can we try to make judgments based on all the information that is collected? That's what I wanted to share. And again, thank you for inviting me. And I'm really happy to be here today. And good luck with all these initiatives.
Thank you very much, Professor Hurks. We look forward to for more information in the questions and answers later. And ladies and gentlemen, if you already have questions that you would like to address, you can also begin to address it on the chat box, and we'll try to curate the questions later. Right now, we need to move on to our next respective speaker. So I would like to invite Dr. Rudy Schreiber. Screen is yours, sir.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the invite. I'm really enjoying it. It's very exciting. And I have to stop sharing my screen, which I do not succeed doing, because it's not what I want to show. We have to be able to improvise. Good, so my name is Rudy Schreiber. I joined the faculty in 2019. I'm actually not a psychologist, I'm a biologist. But interestingly, my first publication was in a psychology journal. So you know how kind of history catches up with you. So I was looking and listening what has been said, and then trying to share with you information that may be the most relevant. Because again, since I'm not a psychologist, it's not as obvious. And one thing I want to share is first that I'm with the Faculty of Neuropsychology and Psychopharmacology, and that I'm the coordinator of a research master. Professor Otgaar had already mentioned that we have in our faculty several two-year research masters, and I'm the coordinator of the drug development and neurohealth research master. Which kind of logical, because in a previous life, before I joined the faculty, I was involved in drug discovery, finding novel treatments for psychiatric and neurological disorders. So now I can kind of share that knowledge to educate a new generation of so-called drug hunters. Well, also because in light of that professional experience, that strongly affects the way that I actually function here. And to illustrate that, that's probably what you can see. I used the metaphor of the T-shaped professional, where the horizontal part stays for cross-domain skills and attitudes. And the vertical part, what we mostly talk about, the so-called deep expertise. So in my case, it would be psychopharmacology and drug discovery. That is one. Two, that philosophy is also the basis for the research master. And herein, I actually have written an article with my colleagues Arie van der Lucht from the Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience, and the colleague Mark Goves from the medical faculty, FHML. And we call that the tripartite drug discoverer. And that's why I want to make the link to the leadership program at your university, and perhaps there can be interesting joint projects. Because obviously for professionals out there, the first thing you're taught in professional environment is to become a leader, because that's basically why they often hire you. But the other components that we cover in this light, and we're now talking really about that horizontal part, are how to be an innovator and how to be an entrepreneur. So that's definitely one of my core areas of interest and expertise, where I'm constantly looking for opportunities to develop that further. Because also I'm not done yet with learning. I'm also still developing my T-shaped professional skills, and actually to the next level, because after the T is the Psi. So there's a second vertical bar, and I'm still working on that one. So that is one. Two, let's go to a little bit of science then. And interestingly, almost all the students, if you ask them what motivates you to join the research masters, they say, well, you know, I saw a video from David Nutt talking about psychedelics. There's an absolutely excitement in the field of psychopharmacology by recent studies, and also kind of rediscovering what has been done in the 60s. And that is what I want to show you. I work with a PhD student, Igor Magragia, and we have written first a conceptual paper. What are our thoughts about this field? How we would to like to work on that? And here again, I was looking where's the overlap with what you're doing at the University of Indonesia. And I heard you have a department working on cognition, executive functioning, and what have you. So don't be afraid. I'm not going to guide you through this step by step to this slide. But the bottom line is that I'm very interested in mechanisms per se. And when I talk mechanisms, I visualize that as a pyramid.
Rudy,
where on the
Rudy,
bottom,
sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Rudy? Because
Yes.
I think we see your Word document. We don't see your slide probably
Okay.
there you should
Good.
reshare. Thanks.
Let's try again then. And thank you. Is this better?
We are
You
looking
should
at a
know-
slideshow
Yes,
right now.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah, we
Can
now
you
see
see that?
PowerPoint. Yep.
yeah, you see the PowerPoint. Okay.
Yep.
And this was the slide I previously talked about with those three domains and the T-shaped professional. And it is then going a bit into the science of the psychedelics and my interest in the mechanism, which I conceptualize with a pyramid on the bottom being at the finest molecular scale. Let's say genes, and then you move you move through the pyramid to the higher order biological systems. For example, at the cellular level, or for example at the level of circuitry, where we talk about brain imaging. And on the top will be functional effects. For example, negativity bias in depression. I'm very interested in the question to what extent the potential therapeutic effects of psychedelics in disorders like depression could be tied to improving the negativity bias, which has been well described in this population of patients, but not only in this population. And that kind of hinges on a second research interest, and that is a transdiagnostic approach. So instead of a DSM-5, so Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5 approach, where you classify diseases like schizophrenia and depression, substance abuse disorders, which are extremely heterogeneous, there's now a new initiative to put them on more biological footing. It's called research domain criteria. And that's one of my other research interests and components for this project that we are doing with the psychedelics. So you can look up the articles to get a better idea, but it gives you a little glimpse of who I am, what I'm thinking, and where I want to be going. And that was it.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Schreiber, for your explanations. We are now going to move forward to Professor Bernadette Jansma. Good afternoon, Professor. Good morning to you. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon, Indonesia, and also good morning, Maastricht. And thank you too for inviting me and also organizing this wonderful binding event. I really love that, and we should do this more often. I think I always realize when we're sitting here. I think, Henry, you were so nice to actually say you can share my PowerPoint with the people. I can also do, because I wasn't sure whether I had sharing permissions.
Okay, then go ahead. Perhaps better than indeed, Bernadette. Yeah. Yep.
So, I hope you can see my slide now. Is this okay?
We can see your slides, Professor.
Yeah. And is this better so now?
Yes,
can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
So, okay, first of all, I'm happy that Henry, also Petra and Rudy already introduced some more of the meta perspective issues. So I'm representing formally the Brain and Language Lab today, but of course I'm also representing the faculty, then the section of cognitive neuroscience and a research center that's called M.Big. So if you are interested in research lines that Henry already shortly mentioned, and I kindly invite you to Google Maastricht Brain Imaging Center, and then you will find us. And just like the fact that I'm here doesn't mean that all others are not interested. That we are all basically equally open-minded. And as already Henry said, if you see a potential link of research, just contact us, best via email. And then if you Yeah, and then we can further go on brainstorming of what might be potential topics. But now Henry asked me to introduce examples of the Brain and Language Lab research. I would like to say a warm hello also from Milene Bonte, who is the formal head of this lab at the moment. We have an extra website also. It's called mbiglanguagelab.nl. So there you can also see what we are doing. And basically, when it comes to language, I hope you see this cognitive model now. So we are cognitive psychologists, like us being able to talk, to listen, to read, to think, to dream as human beings is a crucial capacity that we have. There's huge debate, of course, whether we are different from other animals. We don't think so, but yeah, physiologically, genetically, probably also by anatomy, there are differences across species, and we like to look into the human species when it comes to language. And here's a famous model where you, for example, see what compartments of language are involved, and each of these boxes basically is a universe of research. So, for example, when I listen, I don't know whether you can see my mouse. So when I listen, then audio enters my ear, my brain checks whether it's speech related or non-speech related, whether we recognize phonemes. Then we have syntactic rules in our head, and when we integrate everything, we understand, and we are able to monitor what we say. And of course, when I speak, for example, the entire process basically is reversed. So I have something in my head, and I would like to push it out as speech. So we are working on this also by using reaction times, because there's still a lot to investigate in this. And whoever is interested in this cognitive compartment, feel free to contact us about potential ideas. Of course, we also do the brainy part of this because we have this wonderful faculty here and also the laboratories that allows us to not only work by experimental reaction time and infer from reaction time on what the underlying process is, but we have another window. We can look into the brain, and sometimes not. The brain also informs us about language processes. And here, I will not go through all the boxes. You see again terms of auditory processing, phonological processing, semantic processing, and you see the brain network that is involved in all this, color-coded to the cognitive function. There's relation. And what we do basically is do a lot of fundamental research to actually map this network better. And probably we know 5% of it. So there's another 95% of uncertainty, but it's wonderful to do this. But we also have research topics, and just as keywords, we work in dyslexia, and I think worldwide we have an issue of reading problems in children, which usually is between 10 and 20% in a classroom. That also depends on the type of language. Therefore, it's also interesting to talk to you and Indonesia, whether actually the problem is of equal size or different compared to a Dutch population or an English population. The differences relate to the difference in phonological structure called transparency of the language. So English is very intransparent, so kids have a very hard time to learn an orthographic letter to phoneme sound mapping. In Dutch or German, it's more transparent. Spain, Italian are very transparent, so dyslexia rates are slightly lower. So I wonder how it is in Indonesia and whether we could team up there. Basically, we do research on all aspects. So there are genes involved because people, it's a family risk, and there's cognition involved, and of course there's behavior involved. So we have a multi-perspective approach all the time. Feel free to consider whether this is interesting. We do the same basically also in bilingualism. So that's interesting, because when you have one language in your head, it's already complex. It's automatic, but it's complex. But if you have two languages, then there might be interference at all these different levels, and we would like to look into this interference. We also do fundamental and clinical research, but I will not have time to look into that. You can look up the publications, for example, in cognitive deficits in metabolic diseases like classic galactosemia. We were working together with people from the medical faculty. Our methods are reaction times, EEG, because then we can measure the speed, fMRI, because then we measure the brain network. We also stimulate. Once we know that something is wrong, we can stimulate and train eventually cognition that is hampered. And basically now linked to Indonesia. So I'm not yet doing work in Indonesian languages, but it's amazing what you have there. It's a unique selling point. So I think people say you speak about 700 languages in your country. I think you're world #1 in being trilingual. So many of you can speak 3 languages easily because you have the local dialect, you have Indonesian and eventually English. And there is a link to cognitive flexibility. So there's a debate whether when you speak more languages, you are more flexible, yes or no. And I was very happy when I listened to Rosalina in the health lab or well-being lab. So eventually we can hook up and study cognitive flexibility in multilingualism. That would be one proposal. But of course, one can also think, can we study how you read, how we read? Is there a difference? Or go into dyslexia? But there can be anything else. We also work on mindset, so crystalline versus fluent mindset, and how that affects learning. Just get into context and we can talk. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Professor Jansma, for your brief on your current research project. And finally, we arrived to our last respective speakers. We have Dr. Jenny Schell-Leugers, and because we are down to one last speaker, prior to the Q&A sessions, I would also like to encourage the audience, if you have any questions, please either prepare to launch the questions during the Q&A, or you can also direct it in the chat box and we'll help you curate the questions. Dr. Schell-Leugers, are you here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Can you see my screen as well?
Perfectly.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for having me, and compliments for organizing such an interesting open day today. So my name is Jenny Schell-Leugers. I work as a legal assistant professor of legal psychology at University College Maastricht. So I actually not work directly at the Faculty of Psychology, but I'm a member of the Forensic Psychology Research Group, and I work together with Henry, for example. I want to very briefly tell you about the research group we have at UCM. It's my department, and it's called Psychology, Science, and Society. And within this research group, and why is my screen not going to the next one? Can you see my next screen? Yes. I focus on legal psychology within this field, and what exactly I focus on, I wanted to illustrate with a very short case example to you. So I wanted to very briefly introduce the case of the farmer Rudy Rupp. He was a German farmer, lived in Bavaria in Germany. He had a farm with farm animals, lived on his farm together with his wife, his 2 daughters, and the fiance of one of the daughters. And usually after work, he would go out to a pub, have a couple of beers, and come home. One night in 2001, he disappeared. So he did not come home, his car vanished, and there was just no trace of him anywhere to be found. The police, of course, investigated the case, but couldn't find anything. They talked to all the relatives, they searched at the farm, they searched for blood, DNA, anything, but they could not find him. It became a cold case, and then a few years later, in 2004, the police decided to re-investigate and open this cold case again. So they went back to the farm, they talked again to his relatives, and invited them all to come to the police station. And during their talks at the police station, all 4 members of his family, so his 2 daughters, his wife, and the fiance of one of the daughters, all confessed to killing him. They all said, yes, he actually did come home that one night when he went missing, and we actually murdered him. Sorry for the graphic details, but I think it helps to illustrate the case I'm trying to make. And they basically said that they hacked him into pieces, they cooked him and fed him then to the farm animals. As I said earlier, there was no DNA found anywhere. There was no car found. The only thing the police had were the confessions of the 4 family members, and all 4 allegedly said the same thing. All 4 of them got convicted for murdering him, even though after they had talked to the police, they all recanted. So they all said, actually, that's not true. We don't know what happened to him. In 2005, they all got convicted. They were sent to prison while maintaining that they were actually innocent. And then what happened in 2009, actually his car was found, and it was found at the bottom of a lake. And this lake was basically in between the pub where he had the beers and his farm, and he was in his car. So he was just sitting in his car, and the theory is that he had too many beers. While drunk, he drove into the lake and he drowned. So there was no evidence of any foul play involved. It took another 2 years for the prosecution to actually acquit the family members, because they still thought they were involved in his disappearance and his death, even though the stories of hacking him into pieces and feeding him to the farm animals was not true. And basically, this is exactly what I researched. What happened in this case, there were 4 false confessions. So 4 people allegedly independent of each other telling a story about how they murdered somebody that in the end turned out to be not true. So what I do in my research, I look at miscarriages of justice, and specifically I focus on research questions about how common are false confessions, how often do they actually lead to miscarriages of false confessions, what are the risk factors, are people actually aware of the risk factors if they get brought into a police station, but also how can we actually prevent miscarriages of justice in the future. And since I do work at a liberal arts and science college, my research is usually very interdisciplinary. So I work together also with sociologists, with criminal lawyers, but also with people who work in police and security studies or international relations. To give you a few ideas of a couple of the current projects that we're running in the research group, where we had looked at police practices and suspect interviews across Europe. We look at police perception at protests, for example. We looked at whether there's a gap between empirical research and what's done in practice in German legal practice. We also looked at what do people actually know about false confessions and confession issues. We looked at what are different public attitudes towards people who get exonerated from crimes. And one of the newest projects is that we're setting up a European registry of exoneration cases, where we want to collect these cases of miscarriages of justice, to give you just a bit of a hint. And then also I'm just starting a new research line, which is an education-related research about violence prevention. And I believe in one of the previous presentations, also somebody mentioned that violence prevention was a research theme. And here we are right now building educational modules, so for higher education, to help with violence prevention. And we did get a grant from the Dutch government to do that. And we want to attach some research projects to this as well. If you do have any other further questions, please feel free to contact me. And thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Schell-Leugers. That was short and sweet and very concise and interesting case as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, all of our respective supervisor candidates have already briefly mentioned about their research interests. And if you have any questions in relations to the joint PhD program, you can either raise your hand so I can give the opportunity to you, or you can also direct your questions to the chat box and we can help you address that to the respective panelists. So do we have, the Q&A is open to the floor right now. So do we have anyone who would like to ask questions? Okay, so there's this one particular questions from Gea. And also I see Professor Otgaar raising your hand. Do you have questions or do you want to respond to these questions, Professor Otgaar?
Well, I have a remark, but perhaps first indeed, let's address the question which has been raised by Gea Arpandi. I think that's perhaps the best thing that we can do. Yeah.
Right. Okay, Gea, would you like, okay, maybe I can just read the questions so that anyone who feels like this is particularly relevant to you can answer the questions. Good morning, I'm Gea, clinical psychologist from Universitas Muhammadiyah Banjarmasin in South Kalimantan, Borneo. I have interest in program, especially in neuropsychology field, because I already work with that field in these past years. Interested in several research programs from neuroscience and neuropsychology. Is there any advice for me to choose? Can I also have more explanations about the joint program, like the each semester or anything? Thank you very much. Okay. Maybe we can start with Professor Otgaar first, or anyone who feels that the questions is very related to your research interest.
I think this is related to neuropsychology and neuroscience. So I'm sure my colleagues, Professor Petra Hurks and Professor Jansma, are the better persons to perhaps address this. One point is about the semesters, which was stated. So we don't have at Maastricht, if you're a PhD student, primarily based in Maastricht, it's not the case that every semester you need to do something and, for example, give a presentation or something. That this is discussed with your promoter. I just want to say what a little bit the difference is. But in terms of the level of expertise, I of course rather give the word to the persons who are the experts in that area, which is my colleague Petra and Bernadette.
So if that's the case, Professor Hurks or Professor Jansma, if you would be so kind to respond to the questions.
Yeah. Shall I start, Bernadette, and did you fill in? So I'm from the neuropsychology, and the department's called neuropsychology and psychopharmacology, and I'm going to send now a website. And I think there's also one website for the cognitive neuroscience there as well. But this website, at least for the neuropsychology, links to what kind of research and education are we offering within the Department of Neuropsychology and Psychopharmacology. And if you then click on people, there is a link to many of the people enrolled in this department and also what kind of research that they are doing. And I think that's the first step. If you want to know more about what kind of research can I do in Maastricht with respect to neuropsychology, for instance, but also for cognitive neuroscience, it would be good to look at the individuals and just contact them. Each and every one of them would be really willing to have a chat and see whether they can work together and to see whether mutual interest and go from there. I think that's the main important message, just to get in contact with researchers of which you think, wow, this person is doing cool research and I really would like to have a chat. And I think we have wonderful colleagues at this faculty. I'm really proud of them, and they can help you also if at some point you say, well, it's not a full match, I want to do something else, then they can think along with you on who you can also contact then. Bernadette, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, very shortly, I already put this in the chat that there is also like the faculty has a graduate school for PhDs, so you can also look and find the psychology graduate school for courses. But each of the research lines has subsections or is linked to graduate schools in their research environment. And the MBigRed, for example, is strong, if I may say so, in terms of training in methods, because like reaction time research is complex, so is questionnaire research, so is EEG, so is fMRI, and so on. So we offer courses from time to time to actually learn, or people know where to find online courses because there are wonderful courses ready online in the world at the internet already for that. And people can then advise, or the supervisor might advise. For example, if you would like to do electrophysiology and say, oh gosh, I don't know how to do that. We get started with a training set and you learn stepwise how to pre-process the data and how to analyze that. And this is also part of the graduate school programs then.
Thank you, Professor Hurks and Professor Jansma. I know we have questions from Asti Yunus, but before that, there's also another question addressed in my direct message inbox. So I'd like to read that first. So how is the registration process to join PhD bioresearch? To application addressed to University of Indonesia or to Maastricht? Can you review the requirements? Let's say my research topic in political psychology, what or who supervisor is appropriate, or a topic in transpersonal psychology. I think I'll address this to perhaps both Dr. Mira Nurmila and Professor Otgaar.
Yeah, perhaps the head of the doctoral program of
yes.
your faculty could
yes, yeah. That's why Dr. Mira Nurmila probably could also address
yes.
this question.
Yes, thank you, Ulan. It's depend if we can select that student will be enrolled in Maastricht PhD program or in Universitas Fakultas of Psikologi Universitas Indonesia. If that the student will enroll in Maastricht University, so the requirement and also administrative is depend on the requirement from Maastricht. But if enroll in Universitas Indonesia, so the administrative and also the requirement is based on Faculty of Psychology Universitas Indonesia. In PhD bioresearch Universitas Indonesia that will be open in 2023, the requirement for the student is have some of pass in the exam with specific requirement will be already mentioned in the presentation, and also have a track record in publication, and also have recommendation from the prospective supervisor. If that interesting in topic of political psychology, there is 2 eligible supervisor in political psychology lab with Professor Dr. Hamdi Muluk and also Dr. Mira Nurmila is me also. So, and then if will be join supervision with the Maastricht University, and then we can see which topic that link to the political psychology and neuroscience maybe. On political psychology, a specific topic might be in assessing terrorism or forensic psychology is also we can see the specific topic can link between Maastricht and also Universitas Indonesia. Professor Henry, maybe you can add something.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ibu Mira, and I think you're completely correct. So I think the most important thing for the people who are in this audience is to know that I think much of this depends on the type of research that you want to do. For example, if you want to do research on the intersection between, let's say, political psychology and forensic psychology, and let's say you want to test people first in Indonesia, you could think about that your main basis remains UI or is UI, so you would need all the administration would then go via Universitas Indonesia, in which you would have, for example, a year stay at Maastricht University because of the joint PhD example. So it depends also a little bit on the research. It could also be the case that there's a student who is highly interested in doing, for example, cognitive neuroscientific work, the stuff that, for example, Professor Bernard Jansma has proposed, or research in psychodiagnostics. And then perhaps the student might think, well, I want to have my main basis first in Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience, Maastricht University, and then have a short stay for a year, for example, at UI to do their project. So I think it depends on the ideas of the project, what the research project is. Of course, this is not, what I'm now saying is not related to the content of the research project, but is certainly relevant because I know that from experience, sometimes students or lecturers who want to do a PhD, they have, and they are from Indonesia, and they have a family in Indonesia, they have children, etc. It will be a huge step for them to, for example, do a joint PhD for 3 years in the Netherlands. So then sometimes you might think, well, I still want to do a joint PhD, but perhaps not for as long as 3 years. and see whether it is possible to do it, for example, more in Indonesia first, and then, for example, a minimum of 6 months in Maastricht. These are reasons that perhaps are not related to the content of the research project, but are certainly relevant, because I think it's important to make sure that if you are in Maastricht or Indonesia, that you feel, let's say, at home, and that you don't feel bothered by thinking about your family, stuff like that. So these are important stuff as well to consider. Well, yeah, that's, I think, something that I wanted to add. Yeah, maybe one other thing I wanted to add, which is a little bit related to what I've been hearing as well. So my colleagues from Maastricht here today, again, thank you so much for being here, but keep in mind, it is still a selection of the colleagues. There are more colleagues, and that's why indeed I recommend people who have an interest in the research to indeed go to these to the websites or links that some of them have already shared. That's why I think it's also important, but that's something that we can discuss after this meeting, if it is possible to have a website for example, at UI or at FPN, a website with this initiative in which people can immediately see all of the relevant information. For example, the PhD program at UI, links of the different research groups, etc., so that people don't have to look it up for themselves. They can just go to a central web page. But that's something that we perhaps might discuss later.
Thank you, Dr. Mira Nurmila and Professor Otgaar, for the explanations. Very conscious of time here. We have another questions from Asti Yunus, which thank you very much, Professor Hurks, for providing us with the links, helpful links. However, she does have probing questions, which is it possible to join this joint PhD program if I do not have any background in academic, but as practitioners instead? Thank you. So Asti is a practitioner in industrial and organizational psychologist and working as an independent assessor and HR consultant. So is it possible to participate with a practitioner background?
Yes, I think it is an interesting question. If you want to enroll at PhD by research, so the prospective student should have requirement pass the test first, and then have a publication track record in the relevant topics. That might be, if you are not from academic background, it should be prepare for the publication first. But if you are not enrolled in PhD by program, so you can join PhD program, but not as by research, not PhD by research. I think this is possible as long as you have a proposal and then recommendation for potential supervisor, and also have passed the test from UI if you have will enroll in PhD in Faculty of Psikologi Universitas Indonesia. And I don't know how it's in the Maastricht University. Is it possible or not, Professor Otgaar?
I think our vice dean or former dean should know more about the exact requirements of this.
Yeah, if I may, so basically it's we have also this entrance criteria that you should have a bachelor in science and a master in science in order to be allowed to enter a program. However, there are exceptions. So if you are in the field and you already could show that you have some publication values by working with peers, then our dean needs to formally file an exemption at the board of deans to allow a non-master graduate to enter the program. So that, but this usually is an exception, but it's not impossible. So it would be possible, but it's exceptional.
Okay, Thank you, Dr. Mira Nurmila, Professor Otgaar, and Professor Jansma. Next, I have another question directed to my direct message. This is from one of the audience interested in research PhD. My recent researches are related to social cognitions, such as theory of mind and empathy, especially in children. Is there any supervisor that may cover these topics in UI or Maastricht? Anyone would like to respond to this? Interest in social cognition topic?
Social cognition in children.
Yeah, social cognition, such as theory of mind and empathy, especially in children.
Yes, I think it is also we have working group, a research group and laboratory who have focused on theory of mind, social cognition in children in UI.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mira Nurmila. The same thing goes in Maastricht. Is there any recommendations? Probably one of the labs or the working groups, research groups?
Exactly, just want to say Lisa Youngman, indeed, the one in the chat that our colleague
okay.
Indeed, yeah.
And I think Cor Meesters also knows a lot about this topic, so I will write that name also in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
And perhaps Peter Mures as well, who does research on developmental psychopathology. I'm just adding the name.
Okay, thank you very much. So for those of you who asked those recommendations, kindly take notes on the referred potential supervisors, look them up, and probably just, find the email address and also begin to have the conversations whether your research topic is within their scope of interest as well. Thank you for the additions, Professor Otgaar. Okay, I think we have, okay, Gea, I think your questions was already answered previously by Dr. Mira Nurmila and Professor Otgaar as well. And do we have another questions from the floor then? Or does either from UI or from Maastricht have anything else to add in terms of enrollment or focus on specific research interest?
Wulan, maybe I want to add
yes.
something. If we have to join a PhD, joint supervision with Universitas Indonesia and Maastricht, the first thing we have to do is contact the potential supervisor first and get the recommendation, and then we can discuss about it would be is it possible enroll in Universitas Indonesia or in Maastricht, and then we select that it might be the topic we can link between Universitas Indonesia and Maastricht. So basically we have prior discussion with potential supervisor.
Right. Okay, I think that's a great advice, ladies and gentlemen. So if you are interested to apply for this joint PhD program, please begin your test research on the potential supervisors and begin with the initial conversations. Check in with them whether the scope of interest is within their scope, and follow what was advised by Dr. Mira Nurmila just now. Unfortunately, we have restricted time in terms of Q&A. We will have another Q&A sessions after our upcoming session. So if you still have burning questions, please address them to the chat box and we'll try to discuss this afterwards. But right now I need to move on to our next discussion sessions, where we will have Nathaniel Sumampo, M.Si, M.Sc psychologist and LPDP grantee, who is currently pursuing his doctoral program in Maastricht University. And without further ado, Niall, yes, we can see your slideshow. The screen is yours.
Okay. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Mbak Wulan. And also, I think it's very interesting to listen to our professor from UI and also from Maastricht University sharing their research interests. And I think I can see there are a lot of opportunities, especially for my fellow colleagues who would like to do PhD abroad, specifically in this specific program, join a PhD program. So at this moment, I'm not a professor, so I will not be your kind of I will not share my research interest as a promoter or co-promoter, but I would like to share my experience doing PhD at Maastricht University. Hopefully, it will be useful for you to make decisions whether you would like to do PhD or not, and also decisions whether you would like to do this join PhD or doing PhD abroad at Maastricht University. And first, I would like to do some disclaimer that the faculty, especially the organizer, Ibu Mira, the head of our doctoral program at Faculty of UI, asked me to share my experience, not because I'm the kind of the best PhD candidate that you can model off or that you can learn a lot, not because I have a lot of publications, but simply because I have the experience doing PhD Maastricht. I also work at Universitas Indonesia, Faculty of Psychology as a lecturer. So maybe I guess that my shared experience being shared will help you to know more. And of course, I hope that you will consider to do your PhD in Maastricht as one of the options. Okay. So I think my time is not, I have very limited time, maybe only 10 minutes, but I have prepared around 20 slides, but no worries, you can have it. And in each slide, there's also some links that you can go to, and then you can learn and get more information about it. So in the chat box before, I heard there's a question about funding, about the scholarships. So yes, I got an opportunity to doing my PhD at Maastricht University. And it was fully funded by our government. So proudly, I can say that our government, via the program of LPDP, the Endowment Fund of Education, Indonesian Education Program, have funded me. And it was, I think, managed very well in terms of I have no dark times because of the scholarship being transferred very late. No, everything is on time, everything is managed well. And it also helps me during the process of my PhD. So I think first, based on my experience, yes, I have decided to further my educations to doing PhD. Why? Because I found out that, yeah, I love my job. I love my work as a lecturer in a university at the Universitas of Indonesia, Fakultas Psikologi. And at that time, I found out that I have to improve myself. Because my interest in forensic psychology, at the time in Indonesia, we don't have specific formal education program in forensic psychology. And also I know that our legal system in Indonesia adopted or modified the Dutch legal system because of the history. So therefore I consider okay, maybe Netherlands is one of my best option to further my study doing PhD in legal psychology, in forensic psychology. And also because of the main reason, I love being as a lecturer, I love doing research, and I love psychology as my main topic. And I use this from the academic transfer. What I would like to say is, I think there's misconceptions because some people believe that doing PhD is only for the one who work as a lecturer, as an academic staff in the university. Yes, it's highly relevant for those who are working in the university or who are working in the research unit, because doing PhD is not, I think the idea is you are expected to be an independent researcher in order to contribute to the society, in order to solve the problem in society, something like that. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, that's the thing. And I think it's also helpful and beneficial if we would like to start doing PhD or choose because doing PhD is, I think, is one of big decisions in our life. So starting with kind of doing self knowledge tests, or I mean, we have to be aware of ourselves. And also from the academic transfers, they offer like free tests that I think it's very good. Why? Because you can get some kind of feedback about yourself in terms of what you preferred approach in developing and shared knowledge, and about your approach in working with teams, about the leadership and preferred working style. Because you can get insight, and it's very relevant in your work as a PhD candidate, because you have kind of yes, you have the supervisors, but you have a lot of freedom to do whatever you want. And it reminds me of the concept that my lecturers in my bachelor programs from the educational psychology department talking about the self-regulations. Because yes, in doing PhD, we regulate ourselves. And we should be aware of our strengths and our weakness, but we also have to be aware of our environment, the support that we can have, we can access, and also maybe some a circle that do not support our decisions and our work as a PhD candidate. So yes, when we decided that yes, I want to do PhD, but we still have a lot of questions. Then because my experience at UM, and so I can say that why not you consider UM as one of your one of the university where you can do your PhD. So maybe here then I can intentionally change my virtual background to this. Okay, so this is the Faculty of Psychology. My virtual background, as you can see, at Maastricht University is very beautiful, in a beautiful area in Maastricht in the border of Netherlands and Belgium. So it's not a big thing if I or my friend says that, okay, let's have an ice cream in Belgium. You know, it's kind of we cross the border across country, or let's do grocery in Germany. So it's okay. It's not a big thing because Maastricht is located in the border between those two, between Netherlands, Belgium, and also Germany. And UM is ranked number 10 in the world for universities under 50 years old. And also annually there are 250 up to 300 PhD degrees. And UM research programs, I think this is highly relevant for us because mostly I believe the participants either working in the universities and also working in the government institution or governmental sectors who have a burden to involve to deal with, to solve societal challenges, social issues, and so on. But in Maastricht, more interesting is often have a multidisciplinary focus. I'm thinking, I know that for example, one of my colleagues being supervised by an economics and also a professor in health. And I myself being supervised, for example, by a professor in clinical psychologist and also Henry Otgaar professor in legal psychology and criminology. So multidisciplinary is a focus. Yes. And from the website, it was mentioned that PhD degree at Maastricht University is not just a study, but a serious research project. The implication is during my PhD there, I feel that I was treated not as a student, but as an academic staff, as a colleague. Maybe there's a bit difference when we are doing PhD at UI, for example. We feel, we are students, we have to, but in at UM, because we are researcher, so they treat us as a colleague, and we have, for example, they provide us facilities that supporting our work as a researcher. I think that's the good things. And we will spend most of our time conducting original research, and also writing dissertations. And most candidates, it was mentioned on the website about the PhD take 4 years. And of course, as Professor Bernadette have mentioned before, at least need a master's degree. There's some requirement to enter this program and a high level of English proficiency with a strong academic record. Therefore, for those who, for example, who work before as practitioners, if you have like one publication, it will be helpful it will be useful for the recruitment phase. Okay, so and also there are 3 ways to obtain a PhD. Apply for a paid PhD position. It depends on whether the professor or associate professor at the UM have like the project or the program or the fund or the grant that can include 1 or 2 PhD position, for example, or enroll in the PhD training programs. Professor Bernadette also mentioned before. And I think this is the 3rd ways, the one that I encourage my colleagues here who attend this and the potential PhD candidate to think about, to do is to obtain external funding and pitch your idea. So this is the way that I found out that all the professors who attend this are very open. So I highly suggest you to feel free to contact them personally, send them email or via mail or Twitter, social medias, get in touch with them and share your research ideas. And let's see the miracles. Okay, so about the obtaining external funding and pitch your ideas, my experience, I got it from LPDP, but so you can go to the LPDP, they will open every year. Of course, there's some requirement. For example, if for the PhD abroad, they required IELTS test, if I'm mistaken, 6.5 or 7, and also the other requirement. And dictee, I think dictee is for, I guess most of us here, the one who are interested to do PhD are lecturer, are docent, also same words like in the Netherlands. So as you can see here, there's beasiswa luar negeri and also joint degree. So this is another possibilities, and also I know that Beasiswa Indonesia Bangkit arranged by in a collaborations of LPDP and Ministry of Religious Affairs. Of course, there the eligible candidates should be the one who work affiliated to the Ministry of Religious Affairs. Yeah. And after about the funding, but then I think your opportunities to get the funding, get the scholarship is even higher if you have the LOA. Because from the LOA, it means that you already have like supervisor or someone that have stated that he or she or they would like to supervise you. This is what I have. On the time in my LOA, I have the title, but then my PhD title or main topic is completely different with what being mentioned at the LOA. But from the LOA, it's also make me scared from the start, from the beginning, because it was mentioned that on average PhD project at Maastricht takes around 4 years, and the PhD thesis consists of at least 5 publications, interdisciplinary review, and at least 3 being accepted for publications. And this is on my LOA. I have 0 publication before, and I think I'm struggling with publications. But okay, why not? Let's see how it works, and we will find out later. So after I decided to do PhD and I got funding, I got the LOA, I moved from Jakarta to Maastricht. As we all know, Jakarta, a lot of people, traffic jam, crowded, comes to Maastricht. Maybe around 200,000 inhabitants, and but then we have to deal with winter time, which is very difficult for us who were born and raised in the tropical area. So in Maastricht, they will ask us to sign an agreement. So it's clearly stated what is our rights, what is our duties, and what is things to be considered in our work as a PhD. So they call it hospitality agreement because I'm an external PhD candidate. And so talking about life as a PhD, there are so many interesting memes outside about PhD. Of course, there are a lot of ups and downs. There are what people think about PhD candidates is to some extent different with the reality. But then overall, it was fun and it was a very positive experiences. Yeah. So and life as a PhD candidate, this is you can starting from the select topic and then write research proposal, For example, in my case, I spent like 6 months, 1 semester, only focus on research proposal. And then, doing literature review, some of colleagues use it as a review articles and so on, and we conduct research. So there are a series of steps that we have to follow. And however, the faculty, the university support us. If we are as a PhD candidate, we can contact and communicate with the methodology and statistics department. We can ask any questions, any things that we face during our work, during data collection or data analysis, and also research support department, ICT office. We got laptop, we got desk, specific desk where we can work independently. And also we involve in research lab. There's an ethics committee who will review our proposal before we start collecting the data, and also research data management, that we have to follow how to manage our data. So overall, I can say that not only doing PhD, not only doing a list of these things, as the main work or main thing as a PhD candidate, but in Maastricht we also have to teach. But this is not a must, there's a lot of flexibility. It depends on your communication or on your discussion with the supervisors. Me, myself, because I realized that from Indonesia, I work as a lecturer. So having experience working as a lecturer as well, or as a teacher in Maastricht, I think is really helps me. Then I learn a lot from my experience being a teacher or being a tutor, because Maastricht also apply the problem-based learning. And also involved in section meeting, involved in journal club, and involved in the PhD training. We can what you call tailor-made training, tailor-made in sense of we can discuss with our supervisor. I think we are lack on these skills, this area. Maybe we need more training about this and that, and then we can discuss it. And then there's also PhD Academy, it's more social support group. There's some workshop and also conference, traveling. But most important things is what I learned from the Dutch culture. I think it's a work-life balance. They put highly value in this topic. So in general, PhD project can be very different. Maybe my sharing experience, it could be different with my other colleagues when they're talking about their PhD. It could be, it can be very different, And there are a lot of up and downs. So there's a golden rules for the candidates, and there are golden rules for the PhD supervisor. But for us, that's the concept of self-regulated. I mean, we are the stakeholder number 1 in our project. We are the captain of our ship. Yes. And so this is some, I used from the PhD slide from Maastricht University. And I think I would like to end my presentation with a little bit, introduce the Dutch culture. Maybe some of you already know or aware of it. That's highly valued, the equality. So you just, Henry is my supervisor. I just call him Henry. Of course, it is very difficult at the beginning, but it doesn't mean I just call his name. I do not put respect on him. And so the Dutch also, this is very typical Dutch word, gazelig, Henry, almost 5 months back in Indonesia, so I lost the pronunciations. But the thing is, time flies when you're having fun. I think when you're doing PhD and you're hopefully you can still enjoy and having fun doing your PhD, time flies. And for me myself, finally I survived, even though they mentioned typically 4 years, and now I'm almost on my 6 years of my PhD, including 1.5 years doing nothing because of the pandemic. So if you want to know more about my publications, you can go to this. I think that's it. So the key message is takes 2 to tango, you and the supervisor. So this meeting would like to initiate. So maybe start from the beginning. Maybe you can start, your discussions with your potential supervisors. And doing PhD abroad at UM, why not? It's a work-life experience. So that's it. Thank you for your attention. Hopefully my shared experience helps you in making decisions, or to ensure yourself that you would like to do PhD, specifically maybe at Maastricht University. That's it. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Dosen tidak bisa dipermainkan.
And I give my words back to Mbak Ulang.
Thank you, Niall, for the sharing. That was really interesting. Of course, I like the play hard part. And yes, indeed, 1.5 years of pandemic really taught us a lot as well. As a fellow PhD students, I can relate with so many struggles that you've gone through as well. But I think we are now, we have another opportunity for a shorter Q&A sessions. And I think a lot of people would be wondering about your journey as a PhD student as well. And yes, we have Sania Isa. Thanks for the insightful presentation. Sania is a Bachelor of Psychology from UI, currently working as a corporate researcher, wants to pursue a master's degree, and later on, hopefully PhD in forensic psychology, especially in research. However, I have an extremely limited experience in research in the field. Is there any way that I can join a research group in forensic psychology? If so, kindly advise on how I can apply to such a research group as a Bachelor of Psychology. Who should I address this question to? It's a
Mas Nail as forensic psychology.
Okay.
Yes, bachelor students nih ya, Nail ya.
Okay, I think hello Sania Isa. I'm very delightful to hear that you have interested in forensic psychology field. As you might aware now, not only I and also Mbak Nurul, but we have Professor Otgaar and also Jenny from Maastricht University. So my suggestion is first, let's send us, email or chat us and share maybe if you would like to do maybe research for your bachelor thesis in the forensic psychology field. I think we are open for it. And also, yes, at this moment, we don't have, for example, specific research group in forensic psychology. We do hope in the future we have it in our faculty. However, because of the, I think at this moment, after the new normal life, it's very easy to connect with other professional in forensic psychology from this field. For example, Prof. Otgaar, I think bi-weekly have kind of he called it cell meeting, so criminological and experimental legal psychology lab meeting, where maybe sometimes researchers share their paper or their research and so on. And I suggest you to join that group as well, because it's open for anyone who interested in this field, in this topic. And while you are as a bachelor students, I highly suggest you to read a lot of articles, journal, or books or papers about forensic psychology, because it will, then your interest will grow, and maybe you can start thinking about your bachelor thesis in the field of forensic psychology. I think that's it, Sania.
Thank you, Niall. I think Professor Otgaar also added in the chat box that indeed there's a weekly meeting, and it's open for everyone, including those who are interested to apply for the program. Okay, so that's an open invitation, everyone. So if you're interested, well, you know who to reach out to. And we have Diandra. Diandra Yasmin is raising her hand. Diandra, are you here?
Yes.
Hi.
First of all, I'm sorry, I can't open my camera because suddenly my internet connection is unstable. Okay. I want to ask something. It's related to the funding, actually. Like I heard that it takes a lot of money to do a PhD. So my question is like what the funding are used for? Like I know it's for living costs, and then your tuition. Is there any other expense that I should know for the funding? And then in related to tuition, since this is a joint program between UI and Maastricht University, so how does the tuition fee works between that? But I think the second question is going to for the faculty staff. Okay. And I have second question. Wait.
Oh, okay.
Should I just keep going or finish after? Should I after the answer the first question?
I think you can go ahead.
All right. And the second question is about when doing PhD, is teaching required in Maastricht University? Because I want to be a lecturer, so I think a teaching opportunity would be beneficial for me. So is there any teaching opportunity if we're doing PhD in Maastricht University? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Diandra. Okay, I think now you can respond to this question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I will respond based on my experience. Yes, of course, doing PhD in general is costly, but it's a worth one in terms of, you have to start with planning your research well, and then with your research plan, and then you will know that maybe how many expenses that you need for your research. I think that's the main thing, and then you discuss it with your supervisor. For the LPDP scheme, we use the tuition. The tuition fee, unit for cover our research expenses. But then also, of course, the Maastricht University support in terms of, for example, access to the resources or database and everything, and it was covered by Maastricht University. Yeah, I think that's it. And also from the scholarship, like for example, from LPDP, they also have the component of living costs, includes your monthly expenses, your accommodations, and also annually there's some allowance for books, and also if there's also component for attending a conference. Yeah, I think so. The thing is, from the scholarship, they would like to make sure that you will survive in doing your PhD. And also it meet the requirement of living costs that being acknowledged by the government of the city there. Even though maybe, the last some months or last years, there because of the inflation, it increased, but I think overall it's still covered, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Diandra?
Yes.
That's about the practicality. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe,
thank you, Diandra, for the questions. Maybe Prof. Otgaar or Mbak Mira could add.
Well, I think it's perhaps good to ask Professor Petra Hurks, because she is also the Vice Dean of Education, about whether teaching can be done by PhD students. I know the answer is already yes, but she can certainly say more about this and what the possibilities are, if you're okay with that, Petra.
Yeah, but it's. I just wanted to say there's. I think it's possible, but I think most often we look at on an individual case what is possible. So while having the conversations with your supervisors at Maastricht University, I think this might be a really good topic to also discuss, so that if there's a plan of what you would like to do, that we can also talk to, for instance, the faculty board or other people that are coordinating the programs, to see what is possible and how everything is arranged, for instance, also legally, so that we make sure that everyone is covered and safe, etc. as well. So I think my advice would be have the conversation about the topics of the PhD, and once you say, okay, this might be really interesting for me, before you then actually say, okay, we're going to do this, it might be good to talk to the supervisor and see what is possible in terms of teaching there.
Thank you very much, Professor Hurks. We have two more questions, and
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diandra. Two more questions, and I think this is quite proper because we are also nearing the end. So first from Nisa Praditya, Mas Niles, I see that one of the reasons for your acceptance is your publications. Is the theme should always be the same? Is the publication should be the first author, or is it still okay if you become third, fourth, etc.?
Yeah, actually, I have answered on the text box.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. Okay, so Nisa, you should publish as first author, of course, and the team should be relevant to your topics. And I think for the questions from Tiara, interested about research on dyslexia. So if there are other audience who's also interested in dyslexia, Professor Otgaar has kindly responded by sending the contact of Professor Jansma. And that's her email address here. All right. I think we are, well, a little bit over, but still pretty much tolerable. Okay, thank you, Professor Jansma. Please directly contact her if you would like to begin your discussions on your dissertations or research topics discussions. So thank you very much. I think that's pretty much what that has been quite a long and intense sessions for today, and we just wrap up with the last questions that we can accommodate for today. Unfortunately, we are time restricted, and now we have come to the end of the sessions. And I would like to thank all the respective speakers for today, participants and the committees for ensuring a smooth execution for today's event. And should you have further questions, please contact, well, we have shared some names of recommended supervisor candidates for specific topics that you asked, and also there are some email addresses. And as of the rest, you've seen what Niall presented just now in terms of how you should begin your PhD endeavor by beginning to contact, exploring the research interests, etc. And should you have further questions, please also feel free to direct your questions to I don't know, Niall, is it okay to share your contact address in case anyone would like to learn more about the process of getting LPDP scholarships, etc.? Niall, you're still muted. Niall?
Yes, of course.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, Niall has put his email address on the chat box. Please take note on that as well. And if there's nothing else, I think I wish everybody good luck for those of you who are getting on your PhD endeavor. Good afternoon, stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you very much for all the respective panelists, both from University of Indonesia and also from Maastricht University. Good afternoon and thank you very much.
Thank you, Wulan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, participants, if you are still here, please don't forget to fill in the evaluation form. It's in the chat box. Please take a few minutes to fill it up, and hopefully that would contribute to improvement for us in the future. Thank you very much.
Biar cepat bisa dikikik aja nggak yang bukan peserta, Mbak? Biar cepat. Biar kita bisa mulai, nggak usah dulu lagi.
Ini apanya namanya? Oke.
Bantu remove ya.
Oke, aku pamit ya.
Terima kasih, Wulan.
Terima kasih, Mbak Wulan. Terima kasih, Mbak Wulan.
Sama-sama, Nael.
Udah ya Mbak ya?
Kayaknya masih ada. Baik Kak, yang peserta udah di-kick semua.
Sedang Mbak.
Oke.
Dan gue itu gabung sini.
Juga kan tadi biar suaranya ketahuan kalau Bapak ada.
Ini lagu-lagunya di Petra.